Well, hi everybody. My name is Tommy, and I'm going to be a science teacher today for today's episode. Now, the first thing I'm gonna warn you is how are you going to concentrate on your class? Well, you sit at your desk all the way through the maybe 17-minute lesson. Then you must have no calculators or nothing to do about this lesson. You might have a notebook or pencil, that's okay. Don't have toys, or even eat, or even drink, or even go to the toilet. Never mind. Now, the real thing that you must concentrate on the lesson. You could do whatever you want as long as you concentrate on my lesson. Today's lesson is about how much water exactly is there on Earth. We have 5 parts. Part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and part 5. You flip to page 68 on your book. So there are lots of pages in this book. So flip to page 75, of course. Could you say day 1? It talks about water. And here's day 2. Day 2 talks about the water cycle. Day 3 just some more things about the water cycle. Day 4, it talks about salty and fresh water. Fresh water and salty water. Let me see where salty water is. Well, salty water is probably on this place, of course. Now, but day 5 is the one you have to concentrate on. How much water exactly is there on Earth? Part conclusion. Conclusion is like the last part of like a 10 or maybe like 5 questions before you end the lesson. So, are you ready to learn my lesson? Let's begin. Now, that click means we're going to begin. You should get it covered. Now, the first one is about water. Now, are you ready to talk about water? Well, let's begin. Most of the surface of the earth is covered with water. Like the ocean, the lake. Here is most of the part of the earth that's covered with water. If you mix these ones and compare with this one, exactly this one will become bigger. Because the ocean is pretty big. Even like the Titanic can't be as big enough to hold the whole ocean. It might just crush down to the tank. And the Titanic will float if the window's closed. Now, you see, there are some parts of the ocean you need to realize. The sea, like the Horizon Sea. Have you ever headed out to that place before? At the Horizon Sea, you might see big crashes, like a car. If you get a toy car, now you could get a toy car and then make an experiment. If you hit the car on your pencil case, the car will suddenly move, right? If you have a table here, you could do it. Maybe you could see that experiment and do it at home, like this. You see, the car moves forward and it lurches backward. So that's what the experiment is going to be about. Well, there are lots of science experiments as well. Now that we finished talking about water, the conclusion about this part is that water is actually some type of liquid. There are lots of types of waters. Salt water, fresh water, tons of types of water in the ocean. On the earth. Well, about 90% of all of the water that's on earth is actually salty water. Only 10% of all the water on earth is fresh water. And 100% is only water. Now let's begin the experiment about that one, about that conclusion? Well, if you want to make that experiment, get a glass or maybe a bottle. This bottle, of course, then you shake it. Could you see high and low tides? Well, then keep it low. Could you see when it makes low tides? Then try moving it like this. You can see the water is moving when you lift it. Try splashing the water around like this. You see the waves are crashing? Well, you see. Then, you see. When you drink this water, you could drink it. But now try and put salt in the water and then shake it. Could you see the spots? The spots are salt. The salt. See? These are the particles that are put in the bottle. Could you see? There, could you see a particle? Particles are really hard to find in water. You have to use a telescope to see the minerals. Only see a few minerals if you like making bubbles, and then the bubbles see chemicals. It makes spiky things. Try shaking the bottle hard. Could you see the white things that move around the bottle? Well, those aren't actually bubbles, but they're particles of bubbles. Now, try bring it closely to your head. What can you see? Particles, of course. Could you see the particles in the water? Yeah. Could you see? Could you see the spots? There, you see the spots. Now, that's the experiment for the conclusion of part 1. Now let's move on with part 2. Now, what will part 2 be about? Part 2 is going to be about the water cycle. Head back for the water cycle lesson. Now, we are going to talk about the water cycle. For the experiment in the middle of the lesson and the last of the lesson of the water cycle, you're going to find out. Water cycle. Water goes through a cycle called the water cycle. In the first stage of the water cycle, water evaporates from the ocean. In the second stage, the water vapor forms clouds and make dark clouds. In the third stage, the clouds get too heavy and fall down as rain. Then there's 3 stages of the cycle starts again, like the maybe 5 stages of the human body: baby, toddler, young, middle schooler, high schooler, college, and grown up. There are 7 stages in the human life cycle, and it basically starts over and over again. Baby, toddler, child, teenager, adult. 5 stages. Or if you want to count in middle school and college, you could add that to make it 7 stages, of course. Now, this is one part of our experiment. Take the cap off the water bottle. Leave it there for at least 1 week in the sunniest spot you could think. Oh, imagine it's full. Then wait for 1 week. Now the water was lesser. I counted to 7 while I'm drinking the water. It's like the water evaporates to make them go faster. But if you want to try it in real home, then you could leave it outside in your porch for 1 week. That will be enough, and keep a flashlight beside it. And give it a fresh supply of water. like a water survey machine. It will spray a little water after 1 minute, spray a little water after 1 minute, spray a little water after 1 minute, spray a little water after 1 minute. Or maybe you can invent it for 5 minutes, since plants don't need much water. You only need like 10,000 kilograms of, 10,000 millimeters of water each day. You only need about 10 liters, 10 liters each year. So you probably feed it like a 1 millimeter each day. That should be enough. Or maybe 3. Because only a year has 334 days. If you water it 3 times a day, it will still not be enough for 10,000 and then 346 days. So now that we've talked about the water cycle, let's talk about the conclusion of the water cycle. Conclusion is the, as you know, now let's talk about the conclusion of part 4. Part 2, of course. Now, part 2 is basically about the water cycle. Imagine this pencil. This bottom, you see this gray bottom is actually the ground of the sea. Then you go up until you reach the top of the pencil. I'm going to show it a little farther for you to see the ocean floor. Then the water on the top evaporates until it's here. Then it rains until it's here. It evaporates until it's here. It rains until it's here. Like the water keep coming from the clouds. No clouds are allowed in the sky, okay? Now, if you want to do it for real, get a crumbled piece of plastic. Then push it out so it will look like a cup. Put some water in it and then leave it in your porch. 3 days. Then leave it in your refrigerator. Leave it 1 day. Take out the water from the cup and place it in the water. See your mini iceberg drift through the sand. Now that you've done making some experiments, let's move on with water cycle part 2. That is something that talks another thing about the water cycle. This time the water cycle in lakes. Humans have fresh water and salty water in their earth. Now, in their earth, what have they got? Well, they've got salty water and fresh water. Now, salty water and fresh water. What does that mean? Water that. Now, I'm gonna ask you a question. How does the ocean feel salty? Well, the answer is a long time ago, ocean used to be fresh. But then, as the dinosaurs in the history, like the Tantosaurus flying above the sea and dropping down, they have the taste of salt. Also, some sea creatures such as the megalodon have the taste of salt. So when they all died, the salt drifted away into the ocean. The megalodon and the Pentosauruses washed up in the sea. The megalodon was about 1,300 kilometers, or maybe even smaller, because this is 1,100 kilometers deep. Now, you see, now let's talk about the conclusion of that part, which is, as you know, part 3. Now, are you ready to read about the conclusion of part 3? Well, part 3's conclusion is an experiment, of course. Well, there are tons of experiments I want you to do. Now, in this water experiment, get a piece of paper, like a card that I threw to you. Pick up that card and place it in a jug of water. Then leave the card in the water for 10 days. Go back to the jug and see what happened to the piece of paper or even the card. So, what did you see after you did the experiment? Email me after 10 days and see whether the paper stayed dry or the paper turned into particles. Please email me 10 days later. And if some of the experiments you don't have enough things, like you don't have a jug, for example, you could get a cup. A cup is also something good. And if you don't have a cup, you could try a trash bin or maybe a spoon. And put a tiny piece of paper inside. Then look in the trash bin or the spoon and see what happened to the paper. Or even put it in something that you don't mind getting wet. Like you take a little pencils of your pencil container and put the water in there. Just like that. But some people that don't have money could use some things like a wooden cup or a drinking horn to do it. But I think it's a little hard to use a drinking horn since it has sharp spikes and you need to poke a hole in your house in order to do it. So it might be a little hard. But people that are rich have fun porches and a big wooden modern house, then they can do the experiment without having any difficulties. Now, why are you getting cold feet? Well, let's begin with the fourth type, with the fourth paragraph, or maybe the fourth day in the book. Flip to page, as you know, 67. Flip to page 67 and you'll see day 4. Now, let's talk about day 4. I think you're getting a little cold feet and you're hungry. Then finish this lesson. You need to concentrate and finish this lesson quickly so we could end the lesson early. So, are you ready to learn about it? Well, let's begin. Part 4. Salty and fresh water. There's salty and fresh water in Earth's oceans. People rely on fresh water to stay healthy. But other animals such as sharks, whales, and saltwater animals rely on the salt water in the sea. The water evaporates liquid to vapor gas. Once it is evaporated, it turns into clouds and falls into rain again. Most of Earth's fresh water is in glaciers. So we can't drink that either. Or you could do that by going to a glacier, putting your mouth on it and sucking water. Then you go back to your homeland, you go back to the secret glacier and salt water. Go back to your homeland, secret glacier. You do it over and over again until your glacier runs out of water and you swim back to your home. You mustn't go there in the summer because it's too sunny and it might melt and be slippery. You should go there by winter if you want to try the experiment. Now that is the conclusion of part 4 in our lesson. What about part 5? Well, part 5 is the conclusion of all the types of conclusions in one. Part 5 is about the cycle, all about the fresh water, all about the depths, all about the glaciers, all about the lakes, all about the oceans, and all about the water cycle. we have a short paragraph to go. Earth is full of water. Water on Earth is basically salt water. 10% of the water on Earth is fresh water. For example, the oceans and the seas have salt water, but the lakes, rivers, ponds, and streams have salt water. Fresh water. And oceans have salt water. Remember that now. Now I'll have a simple question for you. See in your book, flip to day 1. Now, color green the bucket the color green 9 buckets to represent salt water. Then color blue 1 bucket to represent fresh water. Remember to count, and if you don't have waters, tick the box and you're all done. So that is the end of our lesson about how much water exactly is there on Earth. I told you there are 100,000 kilometers in depth, which means there's 13,000 kilograms of water that's produced in the ocean each day. So if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe me more at Studying About Science with Tommy. So see you, and make sure to subscribe and smash that like button so you can see more videos of studying English with Tommy. See you.